TJ, you know about this. You were once a big name receiver opposite another big name receiver, and you know how teams approach the cap. The idea of almost $50 million to two receivers is very rare. So, give it to us. If you're the 49ers, how would you play this with these two guys?
You can do it. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Deebo's contract next year is the final year in his contract, if I'm not mistaken. Ideally, you want to keep the younger guy. That's just the way the NFL works. But if they don't re-sign BA, he's going to be fine, because finding a good receiver that can get open, that can run, that's shifty, that can block, you don't find all of that in one receiver. And so either way it goes, he's going to be fine. But if I'm the 49ers, I find a way to make it work, because then you're going to have to go try to find somebody that can do what he's done, and it's not that easy.
So that was TJ there. He's kind of saying Aiyuk's the guy you want to keep long term. Deebo's contract's up next year. You can't, and for people wondering, you can't cut Deebo this year to save any money or trade Deebo for any money. His dead cap hit is, I think, like 100% of his contract value. So there's no benefit of getting rid of Deebo this year. But he kind of made it seem like you'd rather have Aiyuk long term. What do you think about that, Deebo or Aiyuk?
Well, there's no question. I think, just Deebo runs through. Aiyuk he doesn't take on as much contact. I think Aiyuk's body's gonna age better than Deebo's. I think Aiyuk is a little bit more of a complete receiver. He's a better route runner than Deebo. Deebo is, a big part of the Niners' ignition, though. And, to me, I hate getting rid of any kind of tone-setting player, because it's hard to have a tone-setting player. You could draft a guy with the first pick in the draft. Doesn't mean he's a tone-setter. So when you find guys that are tone-setting players, man, you want to keep them. Deebo's a tone-setter. But I'd rather have Aiyuk long-term. But the thing is, you've already signed Deebo for $28 million. So you're not going to be able to move Deebo. And if you do, you're not going to get nearly as much in return unless somebody's really in love with him. And then you got to factor in the fact that Shanahan loves Deebo. So Deebo's here. And then the question is, do you pay Aiyuk, $28 million and have $50 million tied up in wide receivers on a team that loves to run the ball? That there's that question as well. But, I'd like to – you can do whatever you want. The NFL is about prioritizing. You can have both those. You can have any two guys you want, but it doesn't mean you're going to have Kittle. Doesn't mean you're going to have Juice. Doesn't mean you're going to have Armstead. Doesn't mean you can keep Mooney. You can, it's not a specific Deebo or Aiyuk. You can have both, but you can't have other good guys. So you just got to kind of decide who you need, who's replaceable. A lot of times it's about your draft position, who's available in the draft. What are you thinking about the draft? So if you get rid of Aiyuk, wide receiver becomes a much bigger priority. If you get rid of Kittle, tight end does. If you get rid of Armstead, D-line does. So, you already have a need in the first round for a first-round offensive lineman at tackle. So it's just a tough call. That's all I would say. I would, if it was Deebo or Aiyuk, I would sign Aiyuk.
Yeah, I heard Bucky Brooks and Peter King on 95.7 The Game yesterday say the exact same thing, and that was, you don't have to sign Aiyuk this year. You have another year. You don't have to do it right now. I know he's wanting it right now, and he's having the classic signs that every wide receiver who's going through a contract extension goes through, which is posting stuff on Instagram and complaining about stuff. Deebo went through the same thing, 2 years ago. You don't have to give him the money right now. I have read that if you did extend him, you could save $11 million in cap by the extension, but it's more of like in the long term, you can't really be paying both your receivers $20 million or $50 million plus in 1 year.
Well, and look how many teams around the league are having an uncomfortable time with their receivers.
Right.
Or trying to get them signed. A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. They've all been traded. Because they couldn't get the teams that had them couldn't figure out how to pay them. And then Peter King made a great point. He's like, the Chiefs traded Tyreek Hill, and they've gone to back-to-back Super Bowls. They have not had a 1,000-yard receiver or running back in either of the last 2 years, and yet they still found a way to win the Super Bowl.
And like, look at how many wide receivers are looking for contracts this offseason. You have T. Higgins, Mike Evans, Calvin Ridley potentially. Justin Jefferson can't even get a contract. I mean, it's a weird market because every single season going into the draft, you hear this draft class has an insane amount of great wide receivers, and it's always kind of true. Like, there always is a lot of good receivers, but that's kind of played itself out on the back end now, where there is just a lot of good, talented wide receivers in the NFL, and some of these teams aren't willing to spend the top money for some of these players. Now, at the same time, I say that I don't think that trading Brandon Aiyuk and drafting anyone in the draft is going to be an immediate fix, especially for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl in the next year or two. It kind of seems like it takes a year or two for these rookie receivers, unless you're lucky, like a Jamar Chase or a Zay Flowers this year. But I just think long term, you want Brandon Aiyuk over Deebo. I don't think that's really a crazy take. And the reason I say that is just because if you look at the teams that beat the Niners this year, the teams that beat them well were the Browns and the Chiefs, especially. They ran heavy man coverage, and I think Aiyuk's your man coverage beater. I think he's your receiver that beats man coverage for the next few years. And I think, in the Super Bowl, it's not that he got locked up in a few plays, but they also didn't scheme him to get the ball a lot. They had a lot of man beaters going to Deebo and not to Aiyuk. So I just think that
to beat man, you got to be a refined route runner,
right?
And Deebo's not a refined route runner. By the way, Stark's in here. Deebo got to go. The hell with dead cap. He can run routes, slow as hell, not the best hands, always hurt. I'd take a second-round pick for Deebo. You're not getting a second-round pick for Deebo. Shows what you know.
What does the hell with dead cap mean? Like,
he's saying well, there'll be some dead cap dollars if you move Deebo. It shows what Starks knows. You're not getting a second-round pick for Deebo. It's not about they're not going to be able to get a second-round pick for Deebo.
He's on a 1-year deal.
Nobody's going to nobody's going to give you a second-round draft choice for Deebo Samuel. You're going to get
maybe because his dead cap.
No, not maybe. He's not going to get it. He's not worth a second-round pick.
He'd be playing for free because the Niners already owe his entire contract in dead cap. Pretty sure.
But I'm just saying, you're nobody's offering a second-round pick for Deebo Samuel.